This video is going to be all things Colocasia. We have lots of Colocasia varieties in our garden. We're going to start with this one is Black Ripple. This one is in the Southern Living Plant Collection. Actually, several of them we're going to show you are in the Southern Living Plant Collection. Absolutely beautiful breeding on these and selections that have been made over the years that made this plant more and more interesting. Common name, elephant ear, but a couple of things go by elephant ear. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. The Colocasias and the Alocasias, go by elephant ear, but we'll talk about a couple of differences that might help you identify the difference between the two. These are native to Southeast Asia and from almost Japan all the way over to India. They typically like wet, boggy spaces. It's an underground corm that's capable of living in very wet spaces. That's going to be one difference from the Alocasias that we'll talk about later. They have become invasive along the Gulf Coast, and we'll drive down ditches in the Gulf Coast where there's water that sits in the ditches for prolonged periods of time, and you'll see them growing down there, mostly in just green colors. I mean, just kind of a same leaf over and over and over again. But what you'll find when you go shopping for these, as we're using them for ornamental plants in areas where they're not invasive, is all the incredible selections that are out there on the market. This one obviously has these incredible black, big giant black leaves. Typically what you're going to see on a Colocasia like this or elephant ear like this is going to be a shield like shape like this, or slightly heart shaped, I guess. And you'll see that the petiole is attached to the back like this and just kind of spreads out into the leaf itself. It like produces the mid veins of the leaf, from that petiole. It's part of the selection process, I'm sure, in the breeding, is having these big and strong and able to hold the leaves up. The main species you're going to see is Esculenta, which is also taro, which is a big food crop that harvested for food. But all parts of this plant are actually toxic unless they're cooked thoroughly. So the leaves, the petioles, the corms, every bit of this plant has to be. You need to know what you're doing if you're planning on eating this plant. Just throwing that out there. But it is actually an important food crop. This is in the arum family, and other, lots of things that are arums. If you are shopping for houseplants today, you would see pothos and monstera. Those would be examples of that. If you were shopping for plants that you might be able to grow in your gardens, it might be jack in the pulpit, or calla lilies would be examples of that. Also could be used as houseplants as well, but I'm just saying that in our garden versus our back porch has a monstera, our outdoor garden has calla lilies and jack in the pulpits here, and then we have these as well. So lots of things, caladiums. There's lots of things in this, lots of ornamentals and houseplants that we use from this plant family. And then once you see that, you can't kind of unsee it. You'll see a flower on these that pop, that will pop up for a couple of weeks during the season. It's kind of calla lily-like. You see the leaves unfolding, from a spot down here in the bottom. This plant is part of the Royal Hawaiian series. This is Waikiki, and this has become an incredibly popular plant. This is like a color breakthrough, where again, in the past, we've just had kind of boring green shades of these, and now we've started off with a black foliage one back there, and then you can see Waikiki, and what it does is it produces this really dark pink middle section as the leaves start to mature. You'll see it in the new leaf, and it'll start to spread out in time and follow this pattern. This is another one that's in the Southern Living Plant Collection. This plant went in as a pretty small plant just a few weeks ago, and we've got it in a spot where it stays moist. So our air conditioning unit is back here, and it drips and ends up right here along the path. So we have several things here like a juga and some other things that would like kind of a little more consistent moisture. And this is by far and away our fastest growing Colocasia in the entire garden for sure. So Waikiki. A lot of folks are going to buy these as annuals that they're going to grow in containers during the season, or maybe out by their pool or some wet area they have in their garden, and then maybe let them go as, you know, just let them die. They can be brought in the winter, but those of us here, I'm in zone 8A in Raleigh, North Carolina. From maybe zone 7B to 11, they can be perennials in the ground. I think more likely 8 to 11. In the lower zones 10 and 11, where you're not going to get frost or freezes, they're going to stay evergreen, but they're going to be dieback perennials here in our area, and that's what they do. This one is called Pharaoh's Mask. This is one we had in the ground last year, and it's come back beautifully this year. Another one that's really super, super interesting leaf. I tore off of it to show off. In order here in zone 8 to have them come back as perennials, we definitely need to spring plant them. We need them established as possible to make it through that first winter. We need them well mulched. We need them, we just need them in good shape when they go to sleep. If they're in good shape when they go to sleep, they come roaring back that next year, a little bit later than other things. So this is a plant, this was an easy one probably to give up on. It wants the soil temperature pretty high before it comes up. A lot of our other perennials, you know, hosto, you'll see jumping out of the ground weeks before your last frost date. These will be a couple of weeks after your last frost date before you start seeing them, but then by midsummer they'll be like it didn't happen, like it didn't go to sleep, as long as, again, it's in a space that's getting adequate water to do that. This one is a new one that's also in the Southern Living Plant Collection. This is part of the Royal Hawaiian series, and it's called Tropical Paradise. Really interesting modeling on the leaf, and one of the things I really like about this plant, a couple things I really like about this plant. One, it's super compact. So a lot of, when we're talking about the size of these, they can get anywhere between 2 feet in height up to 6 or 7 feet in height for really, really giant ones. This one's on the more compact side. It's listed at 24 by 24. Have seen one in a container that's about 3 feet tall before, so I think it can get a little bit taller than that. But it also, not only does it have this beautiful modeling on the leaf, it also has this wild texture along the stem as well that's like nothing else I've ever seen. I'm actually as drawn to that stem color as I am this leaf color. I think this one's going to be extremely popular. Everything in this Royal Hawaiian series is just so, so good. We have a lime-colored Elephant here in the front garden. There are a bunch of these on the market. There's like limeade and lemon lime and lime gecko. There's a bunch of these yellow foliage ones, and I actually don't know which one this is. They all have, someone will develop a little more slight splashes of color in them and that kind of thing, but it's certainly an interesting color here. We have, so I think part shade is probably overall the best place to put these, but you will see them growing in full sun as well, but they really need to be in spaces where they have adequate water. So where we'll see them in full sun along the roadsides, you know, in South Louisiana, they're sitting in water basically. So you have to think about that. If you have them in full sun and they don't have adequate moisture, they're probably just going to be stagnant. What you'll see in these, if they're not getting what they need, they just stay the same size basically the whole season, and they don't really get to start growing, and they don't really develop. You know, this one, we can see every single time it puts out a new group of leaves, the leaves are getting larger, the plant is getting taller. You know, it's definitely, you know, it's thriving out here. You will see something very different if it's not getting adequate moisture. You'll see it'll stagnate. There'll be spaces between the leaves like this. You'll be able to see the ground, and the leaves will be much smaller than that. So again, we did say they do flower, and it gets this interesting spadix that has, I think some people say a slight banana smell a little bit to it. I think they're fly pollinated. We have, I think on our calla lilies right now are putting up that spadix, and again, you'll see things in this plant family with that interesting little tubular, little tubular flower that pops up. It's like an off-white kind of color. Here's an example of one that's been in the ground for 4 years. It has root competition from a maple. It's in too much shade. The shrub that's next to it's grown over the top of it, and you can see it's basically just been diminishing over the years. So that's what I mean. If they'll just get stagnant, they won't do anything. They don't necessarily die, but they definitely will not thrive if they're not getting enough light and enough moisture. Here's the typical green elephant ear you would get from a box store. Notice how, you know, the leaves, same exact thing we've been showing off here. All Colocasia like this, you're going to see the leaves facing downward typically. On Alocasia, you'll typically see them pointing up. Those are also going to be plants that need better drainage. They just grow in different kind of conditions. There's several differences between them. But as soon as I tell you one of them points downward like this and one of them points upward, you're going to go to a store and see Alocasia arizonica, that's some hybrids of that where the leaves point down and have super narrow skinny leaves. And like none of these, sometimes in plant breeding and plant selecting, you know, folks are selecting for different features, and then we get kind of this overlapping where the plants start to look, you know, the same a little bit over time. We're, you know, trying to shrink the flowers of one and increase the flowers of another, and we start making plants kind of look the same. So you will see on Alocasia more of a kind of a thicker, waxy leaf on it. These have I wouldn't say they're rough at all, but they're definitely, if in comparison, when you touch the two, you would notice the difference quite a bit on, you know, on the texture of the leaf overall. This one's also in a dry space. This is a giant one, probably should be head high at this point, probably should have leaves about this high, or about this wide. But this red bud that it's sitting under is definitely drying this space out. It comes back reliably. We've had no problem with that. But again, if slightly drier conditions than it would like, our goal here was to have this thing, you know, just kind of fill this corner up and be this big giant tropical piece. It'd have to have a little bit more water than it's getting, and we've had a dry season, so that's probably stunted it a bit. But it's getting all it needs. It'll come back, you know, year over year, and we love this beautiful tropical look here in the garden. This is a variety that we actually don't have a name for. It's one that was sent to us to trial this year, and it has been a standout in the garden. This thing is absolutely amazing. You can see the size of the leaves on here. It is in a spot that's getting a little more moisture than some of the other ones that you've seen in the video so far. So what are the uses? Obviously, we put them, you know, these are accent plants for us that just, you know, we put them here or there in the garden to, you know, they contrast with everything you put them next to, you know, grassy like foliage, or, you know, traditional little round leaf evergreen shrubs like that emerald snow loropetalum back there, the dark green, you know, foliage of this magnolia that's behind it. You know, they just contrast with anything. They work great as container plants. We started the video over there with the black ripple variety in a container. It's doing fantastic. It does need adequate moisture, you know, in that container. They can be used in bog gardens and water gardens, and they can be used as house plants. Steph's dad had one, you know, as a kid, they'd have it outside during the summertime and bring it in the winter, and it stays evergreen, you know, as an evergreen. It's just a house plant, you know. The other thing you can do, if you want to, is dig them in the fall if you're in colder areas, and store them. You can look that up on the internet. There's lots of things, caladiums and other things that you can do, that dahlias and all kinds of things we can dig in the fall and store through the winter months. Planting is interesting. If you're getting one of the smaller growing varieties, you probably only put them down 3 or 4 inches down into the ground. You'll see these at box stores in the winter time. You'll see them as plants later in the spring. In the late winter, though, you'll see them showing up as tubers and bags and that kind of thing. You can, if they're small, on the smaller side, I'd probably plant them more shallow. If they're larger ones, you can plant them a little bit deeper at that time. But again, you can see the payoff. The smaller ones that you've seen in the video are definitely ones that are in drier root competition areas. The ones near my air conditioning unit in this little spot here that tends to stay wetter. It's also, you know, the water hose is here. When you turn the water hose on for that 20 seconds before you start using it somewhere else, it always gets this particular plant, and it's performing extremely well. These can be divided. The easiest way is probably from offsets, where you'll see it come back up the following spring, and it, you know, you'll have a piece that's clearly separated from the rest of the plant. Those are fairly easy to cut with a sharp shovel down between the two plants, cut them out, dig them out, and replant them somewhere else. So they pretty easy to produce more of these in time if they're thriving in your garden. They tolerate high humidity. They tolerate a lot of what the southeast can throw at them. Because all parts of the plants are poisonous without cooking them in some way or preparing them in some way, they're pretty much deer proof and rabbit proof and all of those kinds of things that we need, some, you know, a lot of us need in our ornamental gardens for sure. Maintenance wise, really not much. Most of the maintenance you're going to do on this plant is going to be in the fall as it goes to sleep. You can you know, for us in our area where they get killed back to the ground, I will cut off all the leaves cleanly once it splays open like that, and not leave them just kind of laying on top of it for the winter time. And then generally we're mulching this garden sometime during the fall, so it'll get a little bit of mulch over the top of it, not much. Then maybe that's going to protect it a little bit from the winter cold. And then we fertilize this garden in the early spring. This is another one of those plants you're gonna see online. It's heavy feeder, heavy feeder. You need to I fertilize by observation. This pot has not been fertilized this year. No, well, I think maybe once we've fertilized these containers when they were first done. That was it. And this thing's thriving. So I'm just looking at it going, I don't think I need to fertilize it. It's got all kinds of new growth coming on it. If it needed more, I would give it more. All the ones we have in the ground, because we keep this garden mulched and we fertilize once a year with an organic fertilizer back in March, they're all doing well. And they're all putting on new growth. They're doing what they're supposed to do. A few of them are undersized, but it's not because of the fertilizer. Fertilizer wouldn't change the fact that they're drier than they would like to be. So that's, you know, I can't fix the dryness with fertilizer. So again, I fertilize by observation only. Not much to do in season other than make sure that they're adequately moist, except for we will get either broken leaves because they get some size on them and maybe you're walking past them, sometimes stepping on one or whatever. Those leaves can be taken off. And then some that just kind of decline in time. Some of the first leaves from earlier in the season might start to look a little bit rough. And I'll take my pruning knife, which has that little hook on it, and if you keep this knife sharp, you can go down in here and cut these clean. You see how clean of a cut that pruning knife will make. And then here's another leaf that's got some decline in it, and I'll just come in here and just look how clean that cut is. But that's really the only maintenance to do on these during the growing season. This is a plant that used to just come in greens, shades of green, maybe with a little bit of red venation in them and that kind of thing. And out of the blue in the last couple decades, we have seen just wild introductions in these that have really incredible ornamental qualities in all of these. All of these elephant ears, and have just become such great garden plants for us here in the area. Again, spring plant them to make sure they're going to come back. Everything you've seen in this video is like one species. If you look on like Plant Delight's websites, you'll see that there are other species as well that are hardy that may also be interesting to you as well. So there you go. Colocasia. Thanks for watching.